The hallway smelled like bleach and warm plastic, the kind of clean that makes you feel guilty for being human. My shoes squeaked with every step as I walked away from room 614. Behind me, the heart monitor was still beeping. Low. Tired. Like it was counting down to the end of something it couldn't stop. I didn't turn back. My fingers were numb around the strap of my purse. My throat felt tight like I'd swallowed a stone. I had just said goodbye to my husband. Not goodbye, I'll see you later. The other kind. The kind you say when your whole life is about to become a before and an after. Inside that room, Ethan lay under white sheets, his skin pale against the hospital glow. His hair was damp at the temples. His lips were cracked. His chest rose and fell like it was taking permission to keep going. He was dying. The doctors had used gentle words. They always do. Not responding. Comfort, care. Time. Like it was a thing you could donate. I leaned over him, forced my voice to stay calm, and whispered, "I love you." "Sorry. I'm going to take a little air. I'll be right back." But I knew I was lying. And Ethan knew it too. Because even with his eyes half closed, even with the morphine pulling him under, his fingers twitched like he wanted to hold on to me. I kissed his forehead. It was cold. Then I walked out. And I didn't stop walking. I pushed past a cart stacked with folded towels, past a volunteer with a clipboard, past a quiet zone sign that suddenly felt like a joke. My heart hammered like I was escaping a crime scene. Because in a way I was. I hit the elevator button 3 times like it would come faster if I bullied it. When the doors opened, I stepped inside and pressed L so hard my nail bent. The elevator smelled like coffee and antiseptic. A nurse in blue scrubs stood beside me, scrolling her phone, eyes soft with exhaustion. The doors slid shut. And that's when I heard it. Voices. Not inside the elevator. Outside in the hallway, slipping through the crack before the doors sealed completely. 2 nurses, close enough that their words carried like they were meant to. "Did you see her?" one whispered. "The wife?" The other replied. "Yeah. The one who just left 614. She really walked out. Like that." The first nurse let out a small, ugly laugh. The kind you make when you're trying to be cruel quietly. "She still doesn't know, does she?" There was a pause. Beep. Then the second nurse said, low and sharp, "No. And if she finds out what we heard from Dr. Klein, this whole hospital is going to burn." The elevator doors shut completely. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up right there on the gray rubber floor. She still doesn't know. What we heard from Dr. Klein. This whole hospital is going to burn. The lights in the elevator flickered once. My reflection in the metal wall looked like a stranger. Ill. Waited. Haunted. My hand froze over the button panel. I wasn't even breathing. Because I had just walked away from my dying husband. And in the last second before the doors closed, 2 nurses had accidentally told me something that made my goodbye feel like a mistake I might never survive. I stood there in silence as the elevator descended, my ears ringing, my mind racing through 1,000 terrible possibilities. Was Ethan not really dying? Was someone lying? Had I just abandoned him because I believed the wrong story? By the time the doors opened to the lobby, my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I stepped out, but I didn't keep walking. Couldn't. The air in the lobby was warmer, filled with the sounds of normal life. Coffee cups clinking, a baby crying, a man laughing too loudly on the phone, like the world had no idea mine had just cracked in half. I stared at the glass doors leading outside, where sunlight spilled onto the sidewalk like nothing was wrong. I had come to the hospital this morning thinking I was preparing for grief. But now, standing there with my heart slamming against my ribs, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't walking into grief. I was walking into a truth someone didn't want me to hear. And whatever it was tied to my husband's death. I turned around, slowly, like turning back might change what I had already done. And I headed toward the elevators again, feeling my pulse in my fingertips, feeling rage and fear rise together like a storm. Because if there was one thing I knew about goodbye, it's only final if you let it be. 3 months earlier my life still had shape. Had routines. Had plans. It had the kind of small peace people don't appreciate until it's gone. Ethan and I had been married for 9 years. Not perfect years. Real years. The kind filled with uneven arguments about money and long silences after hurt feelings. The kind where love wasn't fireworks every day, but a steady hand reaching for yours in the dark. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Indianapolis. A 2-bedroom house with a porch Ethan kept promising to repaint next summer. A backyard where he grilled on Sundays even when it was too cold because he said the smoke made the food taste like victory. Ethan was the kind of man who didn't need attention. He didn't walk into a room trying to be seen. But when he spoke, you listened. Not because he was loud, but because he meant what he said. He worked as a project manager for a construction company. Long hours. Hard work. Good pay, but never enough to make you feel safe. I worked as an office coordinator at a dental practice. Answering phones, making schedules, smiling until my cheeks hurt. We weren't rich, but we were okay. Then Ethan started coughing. First it was small. A dry cough in the mornings. Something he blamed on allergies. Something he laughed off like it was nothing. Probably the dust at work, he said. Then he lost weight. He said he was trying to cut down on junk. Then came the nights he woke up sweating, sheets damp, breathing like he'd been running. I begged him to see a doctor. He kept saying later. Men like Ethan always say later. Until later becomes too late. The day he finally went in, the doctor didn't smile. Not even a little. They sent him for scans. Blood work. More scans. More tests. Then we sat in a cold office across from a man who spoke like he was reading from a script he hated. Stage 4, he said. And my world went silent. I remember looking at Ethan's hands. They were resting on his knees, knuckles rough from work, nails short and clean like he still thought he was going to go back to normal after this conversation. What do we do? He asked. The doctor's eyes softened, and I hated him for it. I hated softness. I wanted answers. We fight, he said. We treat aggressively. We see how his body responds. Ethan nodded like he was agreeing to a new job. On the drive home he didn't talk. Neither did I. At a stoplight he reached over and took my hand. His palm was warm but his grip was tight. We're going to be okay, he said. I didn't believe him. But I squeezed back anyway. Chemotherapy turned our home into a place I barely recognized. There were pill bottles on the kitchen counter. Medical bills stuffed into drawers like they were shameful secrets. A trash can beside the bed because nausea didn't care about pride. Ethan's face changed. His cheeks hollowed. His eyes sank in. His hair thinned, then fell out in clumps he pretended didn't bother him. But it did. It bothered him in the quiet moments, when he thought I wasn't watching, when he stared too long at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. And it bothered me too. 'Cause I couldn't fix it. I couldn't trade places. I couldn't bargain with God. All I could do was show up. And I did. I drove him to every appointment. I sat beside him in cold infusion rooms with chairs that smelled like disinfectant and sadness. I held his hand while poison dripped into his veins, hoping it would kill the cancer before it killed him. And through it all, one person stayed close. My sister Lila. Lila was 2 years younger than me. She had a sharp smile and a voice that always sounded like she was half laughing, half judging. We grew up together. Shared clothes. Shared secrets. Shared everything. But adulthood had changed her. Lila married young, divorced fast, and decided the world owed her something for the time she wasted. She bounced from job to job, man to man, city to city, always chasing something that never stayed. When Ethan got sick, she suddenly became present. She brought casseroles. She offered to drive Ethan when I couldn't. She cleaned the kitchen without being asked. First I was grateful. Thank you, I told her one night while she folded towels in the living room like she lived there. Of course, she said. He's family. She said it with such sweetness that I almost cried. Because when your world is falling apart, kindness feels like a rope. But ropes can also be traps. The first moment I felt something off was a Tuesday afternoon. I got off work early, drove home expecting to find Ethan asleep. Instead, I heard laughter. Not Ethan's tired chuckle. A different laughter. Like, flirty. I opened the front door quietly, the way you do when you don't want to wake someone. The sound came from the kitchen. I walked in. And there was Lila, leaning against the counter, her hand resting on Ethan's shoulder like it belonged there. Ethan was sitting on a stool, looking pale but smiling. Actually smiling. When they saw me, both of them froze for half a second. It was small, but it was real. "Oh," Lila said quickly. "Hey, you're home early." Ethan cleared his throat. Lila was just keeping me company. I forced a smile. "That's nice." I told myself not to be paranoid. I told myself Ethan was dying, and my brain was looking for extra pain because it didn't know what to do with the pain it already had. But then it happened again. And again. Little moments. Lila brushing crumbs off Ethan's shirt like she was his wife. Lila knowing what he wanted to drink before he asked. Lila staying late, even when Ethan was exhausted and I was trying to get him to rest. One night after she left, I said as gently as I could, "Do you think Lila is around a lot?" Ethan stared at the TV like it was giving him the answer. "She's helping. Don't start, okay? I don't have the energy for drama." Drama. That word landed like a slap. I swallowed my feelings like I had swallowed everything else for months. I told myself the only thing that mattered was keeping Ethan alive. Then the hospital started. Ethan had a bad reaction during his 4th round of chemo. Fever. Confusion. His breathing became shallow and fast. I called 911 with shaking hands. The ambulance lights painted our living room red and blue like a warning. At the hospital, they admitted him quickly, moving him through doors I wasn't allowed to follow. Machines beep. Nurses spoke in codes. Doctors looked at charts like Ethan was a math problem. They put him in ICU for 2 days. Then moved him to a regular floor when he stabilized. But he didn't really stabilize. He just weakened. Every day he became less Ethan. And that's when Dr. Klein entered the picture. Dr. Marcus Klein was handsome in a way that felt practiced. Mid-40s, perfectly styled hair, calm eyes, voice smooth like he had learned how to sound reassuring even when he was delivering disaster. He shook my hand the first time we met, holding it a beat too long. "Mrs. Walker," he said, smiling. "I'm overseeing Ethan's care now. We're going to do everything we can." Everything we can. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. 'Cause what else did I have? Dr. Klein spoke to me like I was fragile. He used soft tones. He explained things slowly like he was teaching a child. "It's progressing," he said after a week. "We're not seeing the response we hoped for." "What does that mean?" I asked. His eyes dropped for a moment, like he was sad about the words before he even said them. "It means we need to talk about comfort." Comfort. It was a pretty word for a brutal truth. That night, I cried in the hospital bathroom with my hands over my mouth so no one would hear. When I came out, I found Lila sitting in the hallway outside Ethan's room. "How is he?" she asked, eyes wide. "He's getting worse," I whispered. Lila stood and wrapped her arms around me. Her perfume smelled sweet and sharp like something expensive. "We'll get through this," she said into my hair. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." And I clung to her like she was still my sister. I didn't see the way her eyes flicked toward Ethan's door. I didn't see the way she watched the nurses, watched the doctors like she was studying something. Over the next week, strange things started happening. Ethan would have moments where he seemed clearer, more awake, and then suddenly he'd crash. I'd leave the room to grab coffee, come back, and he'd be asleep with a new bag of fluid hanging beside him. Sometimes I'd ask, "What is that?" A nurse would reply, "Doctor's orders." Sometimes I'd ask Dr. Klein questions and he'd give answers that sounded right but felt empty. "We're managing symptoms. We're following protocol. We're doing what's best." Then, one afternoon, I overheard a nurse say something that made my skin go cold. I was walking back from the vending machines when I passed the nurses' station. 2 nurses were talking quietly, faces serious. "I'm telling you," one said, "this isn't matching the labs." The other replied, "Shoo. Not here." I stopped for half a second, my pulse jumping. "Matching the labs," I whispered to myself. When I stepped closer, they noticed me and went silent, eyes sliding away. "Is something wrong?" I asked. Both of them forced smiles. "Just busy," one said too quickly. They turned away like I wasn't there. I walked back to Ethan's room with my hands shaking. Inside, Ethan lay with his eyes closed, breathing slow. On the bedside table, a small paper bag sat folded neatly. It wasn't there earlier. Opened it. Inside were 2 pain pill bottles with Ethan's name on them. But the pills inside were different colors than the ones I recognized. My stomach flipped. I carried the bottles to the nurse. "These look different," I said. "Is this normal?" She glanced at them quickly. "Pharmacy sometimes changes suppliers." I stared at her. "Are you sure?" She smiled again. "Yes, ma'am." But her eyes didn't meet mine. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the chair beside Ethan's bed, watching his chest rise and fall, listening to the machines sing their cold songs. I watched Lila come in at 9:30 p.m. with a cup of coffee for herself, not for me. "You should go home and rest," she said, like she had the authority. "I don't want to leave him," I said. Lila sighed. "You're not helping him by falling apart." I looked at her. "Have you talked to Dr. Klein much?" Lila blinked too slow. "Just the normal stuff." "Why?" "No reason," I said, but my heart was pounding. She tilted her head. "You're getting suspicious about everything." "It's stress." Stress. That word again. Everyone kept using words that made me feel like the problem was my mind. Not my husband's body. Not the hospital. Not the way things didn't add up. 2 days later, Dr. Klein called me into a small conference room. The room smelled like old coffee and air freshener. He sat across from me with a folder in front of him. Lila sat beside me, her hand already on my forearm like she was claiming her place. Dr. Klein's face was serious. His voice was low. "I'm afraid Ethan is nearing the end," he said. My world tilted. "What?" I whispered. "His organs are starting to fail," Dr. Klein continued. "We can keep him comfortable, but we should prepare." "Prepare? For what?" "For my life to shatter." I looked at Lila, expecting tears. Her eyes were glossy, but her mouth was tight, controlled. "How long?" I asked. Dr. Klein sighed. "Hours to days." Lila squeezed my arm. "Oh my God," she whispered. I stared at the folder. "Can I see the tests? The results?" Dr. Klein's smile was gentle, almost pitying. "It's a lot of medical information," he said. "It might confuse you." I felt heat rise in my chest. "I want to see it," I repeated. Lila leaned closer. "Sis, maybe don't stress yourself." "I said I want to see it," I snapped louder than I meant. The room went silent. Dr. Klein's eyes sharpened for a split second, just a flash, before the softness returned. "Of course," he said. He opened the folder, slid a few pages toward me. I scanned them, but the words blurred. Numbers. Abbreviations. I wasn't a doctor. And Dr. Klein knew it. He pointed at a line. "Here you can see the markers." I stopped him. "Can I take copies?" His smile tightened. "Hospital policy doesn't allow." "Yes, it does," a voice said from the doorway. We all turned. A nurse stood there, older, with gray hair tucked under her cap and tired eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. Her badge read, "Nurse Harris." She stared straight at Dr. Klein. "Patients have rights," she said calmly. "And families can request records." Dr. Klein's jaw flexed. Lila's hand slid off my arm like it had burned her. Nurse Harris looked at me. "You okay, honey?" I nodded, but I wasn't. Because in that moment I saw it. The tiny war happening under the surface. And I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't just illness. This was something else. Something hidden behind polite smiles and hospital policy and words like comfort and stress. That night, Ethan took a turn. His breathing became shallow. His lips turned pale. The nurse increased the oxygen. Dr. Klein came in, spoke softly, and ordered more medication. I watched them hook another bag to his fore. Asked what it was. A nurse said, "It's for his comfort." Ethan's eyes fluttered open for a moment. He looked at me like he was trying to swim up from deep water. "Maya," he whispered. Leaned close. "I'm here." His voice was barely a thread. "Don't trust." He coughed, face twisting. The monitor beeped faster. "Don't trust who?" Begged. His eyes rolled, and then he was gone again into sleep. The nurse adjusted the drip. Dr. Klein patted my shoulder like I was a child. "Sometimes patients say things," he murmured. "Delirium. Delirium." Again the same pattern. Make me doubt. Make me small. Make me quiet. But I couldn't be quiet anymore. Because my husband had tried to warn me with his last ounce of strength. And now, hours later, I was in that hallway saying goodbye and walking away. Right before I heard the nurses talking. Back in the present, my feet moved faster toward the elevators as my mind replayed their words. "She still doesn't know. What we heard from Dr. Klein. This whole hospital is going to burn." I needed to know what they meant. I needed to know now. I pressed the elevator button. It lit up. The doors opened. I stepped inside and hit 6. As the elevator rose, my hands shook so badly I had to hold them together. The doors opened on the 6th floor. The hallway was quieter than before, like even the air was bracing itself. I walked fast toward the nurses' station. 2 nurses stood there. One was young with dark hair pulled tight. The other was older, eyes sharp, mouth set. They were the same nurses I had heard. When they saw me, both of them stiffened. I didn't pretend. I didn't smile. "I heard you," I said, voice low but steady. "In the hallway. Before the elevator doors shut." Their faces drained of color. The young one's lips parted. You weren't supposed to." "I heard you," I repeated. "And you're going to tell me what I don't know." The older nurse glanced around, then leaned closer. "Not here," she whispered. "They watch everything." My heart thudded. Who watches everything? Her eyes flicked toward the hallway where Dr. Klein's office was. The young nurse swallowed hard. "Mrs. Walker, you should just go back to your husband." "I will," I said. "But not until you tell me the truth." The older nurse hesitated, then made a choice. I could see it in her face. Fear fighting with something else. Guilt. Anger. Maybe both. 5 minutes, she said softly. "In the supply closet. End of the hall." I didn't ask why. I just nodded and walked, every step feeling like I was stepping closer to a cliff. The supply closet smelled like latex gloves and cardboard. Boxes were stacked to the ceiling. A mop leaned in the corner like it was listening. The 2 nurses slipped in behind me and shut the door. The older nurse spoke first. "My name is Tasha." The younger one whispered, "I'm Erin." I stared at them. "Talk." Tasha exhaled shakily. "We weren't supposed to say anything. But when you left, when you said goodbye, it felt wrong." My throat tightened. What felt wrong? Erin's eyes filled with tears. "They changed his meds. Orders came in that didn't match his chart." Froze. "Changed how?" Tasha swallowed. "Higher doses. Different medication. Sometimes, meds that make breathing slower." My whole body went cold. "Are you saying?" Erin cut in, voice shaking. "We're saying someone might be speeding this up." The words hit like a punch. I grabbed the edge of a shelf to stay standing. "Who?" They both went quiet. I whispered, "Who?" Tasha's eyes hardened. "Dr. Klein has been writing the orders. But he's not the only one involved." My chest felt too tight for air. "What does Lila have to do with this?" Erin flinched at the name. Tasha's face twisted. "You already know, don't you?" I shook my head, but I was lying. Because deep down I had felt it for weeks. The closeness, the control, the way Lila looked too comfortable in my tragedy. Aaron spoke, voice barely audible. We overheard Dr. Klein on the phone. He didn't know we were behind the curtain in the medication room. He said something about the beneficiary and paperwork, and making sure she doesn't change her mind. My stomach dropped. Beneficiary, paperwork, change her mind. Tasha added. He also said a name. Lila. The room swayed. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. That's not proof. Aaron nodded quickly. I know. But then, we saw her in his office. Late at night. More than once. Tasha's hand shook. And then yesterday we saw Dr. Klein slip her an envelope. I stared at them. Why are you telling me this now? Aaron's tears fell. Because you're not supposed to be the one walking away. He is. Tasha's voice was firm. Mrs. Walker, you need to look at your husband's records. Not the pages Dr. Klein shows you. The actual records. Medication logs. Pharmacy dispensing. Everything. My mind raced. If this was true. If someone was pushing Ethan toward death faster. Why? Money. But Ethan and I didn't have money like that. Unless the money wasn't ours. Unless it was something tied to his death. I thought of the life insurance policy Ethan's company had. The one he mentioned once when we were filling out forms. A benefit that would take care of Maya if anything happens. My skin prickled. Who is the beneficiary? I whispered. Aaron looked down. Tasha's face went pale. You need to check. Now. I left the closet with my heart beating like a war drum. I didn't go to Ethan's room first. I went to the records office. It was a small area with locked cabinets and a desk where a clerk sat, chewing gum, eyes bored. I need my husband's medical records, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. The clerk blinked. We can submit a request. My husband might be dying, I snapped, then lowered my voice. I have legal authority as his spouse. I need the medication administration record. Right now. The clerk hesitated. Then Nurse Harris appeared behind me like she had been waiting. She's allowed, Nurse Harris said firmly. Get it. The clerk's eyes widened at the tone, and she moved quickly. Minutes later, a stack of papers sat in my hands. My fingers flipped through them, scanning for something I could understand. Medication names, dosages, and there it was. A medication listed multiple times that I recognized from the warnings Ethan's original oncologist had given. A strong sedative, used carefully, and not in doses like this unless necessary. But the dosage was higher than normal. And it had been administered when Ethan wasn't in severe pain. I turned the page. There were notes, some missing signatures, some scribbled initials that didn't match the nurse names I knew. My pulse roared in my ears. Then I found the most important page. The patient information summary. Emergency contacts. Next of kin. And under authorized decision maker for care if patient incapacitated, there were 2 names listed. And Lila's. I stared at it, feeling the world crack. How could Lila be on there? I never added her. Ethan never said he added her. I flipped again. Form. Signature. Ethan's name. But the handwriting looked wrong. Too neat. Too steady. Ethan's hand had been shaking for weeks. My vision blurred with rage. I marched straight to Dr. Klein's office. His door was half open. The smell of cologne drifted out, sharp and expensive. I knocked once and walked in without waiting. Dr. Klein looked up surprised. Then his face smoothed into a polite smile. Maya, he said. How are you holding up? I held up the papers. What is this? He asked. His eyes flicked over them. Those are records. I'm not sure what you. Why is my sister listed as an authorized decision maker? My voice was shaking now. Dr. Klein leaned back, as if the question bored him. Patients can add family members. Ethan must have requested it. He didn't, I said. Dr. Klein's smile tightened. You're emotional. This is a difficult time. I stepped closer. Where did this form come from? He held my gaze. Hospital intake. Standard. I slammed the papers onto his desk. That signature is not my husband's. For the first time, his eyes flashed irritation. Maya, he said quietly, I understand you're desperate. But accusing staff. Where is Lila? I demanded. His jaw clenched. I don't know. I laughed once, short and bitter. Liar. He stood, voice firmer now. You need to calm down. If you continue acting like this, I may have to ask security to escort you out. Something in me snapped. I leaned in so close I could smell his mint breath. If my husband dies and I find out you helped someone forge paperwork or change medications, I whispered, I will burn your life down in ways you can't imagine. For a moment his mask slipped. Fear. Real fear. Then it was gone, replaced by smooth control. Go back to your husband, he said coldly. Spend your last moments with him. I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, his voice followed me. One more thing, he said. Pause. He spoke softly, like a threat dressed as kindness. Be careful what you think you know. Grief can make people see monsters that aren't there. I didn't respond. I walked out and headed straight for Ethan's room. My hands shook as I pushed the door open. Ethan lay still, oxygen hissing. His face looked more hollow than ever. Lila was there, standing by his bed, one hand on the railing, the other holding Ethan's limp hand. She looked up at me and smiled. Slow, sweet smile. Like she had been waiting. Oh, sis, she said softly. You came back. I stared at her, unable to hide the fury burning through me. What are you doing here? Asked. Lila's smile didn't move. Being here. Like you should be. I stepped closer. Did you add yourself to his medical forms? Lila's eyes widened slightly, as if she was impressed. Then she sighed dramatically. You're really going to do this now, she said. Yes, I said. Right now. Lila's voice dropped. You're exhausted. You're not thinking clearly. I looked at Ethan. His eyes were closed. His breathing shallow. I felt my own tears come, but they were hot with anger. Tell me the truth, I said. Lila stared at me for a moment. Then she leaned in, close enough that only I could hear. You want the truth, she whispered. Fine. Her voice was soft, but the words were sharp. Ethan didn't want to leave you with nothing, she said. He updated his policy months ago. My heart thudded. What policy? She smiled. Life insurance. The room spun. No, I whispered. Lila's smile widened. Oh yes. I grabbed her arm. What did you do? She yanked her arm away, face hard now. I didn't do anything, she hissed. You did. You were too busy playing the perfect wife to notice he was lonely. He was scared. He needed someone who understood him. My hands clenched. You're sick. Lila leaned closer again, eyes gleaming. And you were too slow. I took a step back, shaking. She continued, voice like honey over poison. He promised me something, she whispered. He promised he'd take care of me. And he will. One way or another. Then she straightened, face sweet again, loud enough for anyone passing the door to hear. I'm just trying to support you, Maya, she said. I stared at her, realizing something terrifying. She was confident. Not the confidence of someone bluffing. The confidence of someone who thought the outcome was already decided. And maybe it was. Because Ethan's monitor beeped slower now. His chest rose, then paused. Rose, then paused longer. I moved to his bedside, grabbing his hand. Ethan, I whispered. Ethan, please. His eyelids fluttered. For a moment his eyes opened, unfocused but trying. He looked at me. And in that faint look I felt it. He was still in there. Still fighting. He leaned close. Did you change anything? Did you add Lila to anything? His lips parted. His voice was barely a breath. No. I turned my head toward Lila, fury exploding. She laughed softly. Then Ethan whispered again, eyes heavy. "Klein." His eyes rolled back. The monitor beeped. Long beep. The kind that makes every nurse in the hallway move at once. Code alarm blared. Feet thundered. The room filled with people. "Step back," someone shouted. Hands pressed on Ethan's chest. Paddles came out. Voices called numbers. I stood frozen, clutching my papers, watching the chaos like it was happening behind glass. Lila backed into a corner, face pale, but her eyes stayed locked on Ethan like she was watching a clock. Minutes passed. Then a doctor stepped back, shaking his head. "Time of death." The words hit me like a wave. My knees buckled. But before I could collapse into grief, before I could even scream, something happened that turned my blood to ice. Dr. Klein walked in. He moved with calm control, scanning the room. His eyes met mine for a split second, and something passed between us. Recognition. And warning. Then he looked at Lila. And Lila nodded. Just once. Tiny nod. Signal. And in that tiny movement, the truth clicked into place like a lock. This wasn't just my sister being cruel. This was planned. I stood there in the aftermath, listening to the flatline sound fade, and I made a promise to myself. If they thought Ethan's death was the end of this story, they had no idea what they had started. The first thing grief does is hollow you out. The second thing it does is sharpen you. In the days after Ethan died, people tried to wrap me in softness. They brought food. They offered tissues. They said things like, "He's in a better place," as if that fixed anything. Lila stayed close like a shadow. She attended the funeral in black that fit her perfectly, makeup flawless, tears appearing at the exact right moments. She hugged me in front of everyone. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, loud enough for others to hear. But her fingers squeezed my shoulder too hard, like a reminder. I didn't confront her again. Not yet. Because I wasn't going to explode. I was going to build. I requested Ethan's full records again. I contacted the hospital's patient advocate. I asked for medication logs from pharmacy dispensing. I asked for security footage near Dr. Klein's office. At first I got polite delays. Processing. Privacy. Policy. But Nurse Harris helped me. She didn't do it loudly. She did it like a woman who had waited years for a reason to finally stop being quiet. "Document everything," she told me. Dates. Names. I did. Then I called Ethan's employer. I asked about his life insurance policy. There was a pause on the phone. Then the woman said carefully, "You're listed as primary beneficiary, Mrs. Walker." My heart pounded. "And anyone else?" She hesitated. "There's a secondary beneficiary. Your sister, Lila Monroe." The room went silent. I gripped my phone. "When was that added?" 2 months ago," she said. "A form was submitted." My stomach twisted. 2 months ago. Ethan was already weak. Already struggling. Someone had changed things when he couldn't fight. I swallowed hard. "Do you have the form?" "Yes," she said. "We can email it." When it arrived, I stared at it for a long time. Ethan's signature was on it. But again it looked wrong. Too steady. Too neat. Forgery. And then I noticed something else. A witness signature. A witness is required for that kind of change. The witness name on the form made my blood run cold. Marcus Klein. Dr. Klein had witnessed the signature. In my house, I spread the papers across the kitchen table like a crime scene. I sat there for hours, staring, connecting dots until the picture became clear. Lila had motive. Money. Dr. Klein had access. Medication orders. Paperwork. And if they could forge forms, manipulate care, and speed up death, they weren't just cruel. They were criminals. But criminals don't fall because you cry. They fall because you prove it. So I did the one thing they didn't expect. Played weak. Called Lila. My voice was soft, broken. "I don't know how I'm going to do this without you," I said. Lila's tone warmed instantly. "You won't have to, sis. I'm here." I swallowed my disgust. Can you come over? I need help going through Ethan's things. Of course, she said, almost eager. When she arrived, she moved through my house like she owned it, opening drawers, checking cabinets, eyes scanning for something. She wanted control. I gave her the illusion of it. I found this, I said, handing her the copy of the life insurance form. Her eyes widened for a second, just a crack, before she forced a sad smile. Oh, Ethan must have. He must have wanted to make sure I was okay too, she whispered. I nodded, pretending to be confused. Did you know about this? Lila shook her head too quickly. No, I swear. I lowered my gaze. It's just weird. Because the signature. It doesn't look like his. Lila froze for half a second. Then she laughed lightly. You're overthinking. He was sick. His handwriting probably changed. I nodded slowly. Maybe. She relaxed again, thinking she had won. Then I said, Dr. Klein witnessed it. Did Ethan and Dr. Klein get close? Lila's eyes flicked away. He's a doctor. Doctors do forms all the time. I watched her carefully. You've been talking to him, haven't you? Lila frowned, offended. Why would I? Because you were in his office at night, I said softly. Her face went still. I leaned forward. I'm not accusing you. I want to understand. For the first time, Lila's mask slipped, and something hard showed through. You need to let this go, she said, voice low. I pretended to flinch. Why? She smiled again, but it was colder now. Because you can't bring him back. I nodded, swallowing my rage. Then I said the line that made her reveal more than she meant to. I just don't want anyone profiting from his death. Lila's eyes narrowed. Profit? She repeated, almost amused. Sis. You don't even know what you're talking about. There it was. Crack. She knew there was profit. And she thought I didn't know enough. I forced a weak smile. You're right. I'm sorry. She softened again, satisfied. That night, after Lila left, I called a lawyer. Not a random one. Sharp one. A woman named Denise Carter, who had built a career tearing apart insurance fraud and medical negligence cases. She listened quietly as I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then Denise said, Maya, if you're right, this isn't just civil. This is criminal. My hands shook. Can we prove it? Denise's voice turned firm. We can try. But we need evidence. Real evidence. So we built a plan. Denise filed formal requests for records. She subpoenaed the insurance forms. She contacted the hospital administration with a complaint, forcing them to open an internal review. And I did something else. I reached out to Nurse Harris. She met me in a small diner off the highway, the kind where the coffee is strong and the booths are worn. Her hands trembled around her mug. I've seen Dr. Klein do shady things, she said quietly. Not like this. But he's always had connections. Always had favors. Does he have a relationship with my sister? Yes. Nurse Harris hesitated. Then she nodded slowly. I saw them together, she said. Outside the hospital. In a car. Late at night. My blood ran cold. Can you testify? Yes. Her eyes filled with fear. If I do, I lose my job. I leaned forward. If you don't, he keeps doing this to other families. Nurse Harris stared at me for a long moment. Then she whispered, Okay. 2 weeks later, the hospital administration called Denise. They wanted a meeting. They claimed they had concerns about Dr. Klein's conduct. We walked into that meeting like we belonged there. 'Cause we did. We sat across from suits and administrators who spoke in careful language. Denise placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of medication logs with irregularities, unmatched initials, times that didn't align, and the signature forms with Dr. Klein as witness. The room shifted. An administrator cleared his throat. This is serious. Denise nodded. It's criminal. Then the hospital's risk manager said something that made my stomach flip. "We have reason to believe Dr. Klein may have been involved in inappropriate relationships with patient family members." I looked at them. "You mean Lila?" They didn't deny it. Denise leaned forward. "We're not here for a settlement. We're here for accountability." The risk manager swallowed. "We've placed Dr. Klein on administrative leave pending investigation." My heart pounded. It wasn't enough, because Lila was still out there. And I knew she wouldn't stay quiet once she realized the ground was moving under her. Sure enough, 2 days later she called me. Her voice was tight, angry. "What did you do?" she hissed. I held the phone calmly. "What do you mean?" "Dr. Klein is suspended," she snapped. "People are asking questions." "Why are they asking questions, Maya?" I let silence stretch. Then I said softly, "Because Ethan tried to warn me." Lila's breathing changed. "You're imagining things." "No," I said. "I'm remembering." Her voice turned sharp. "You're going to ruin everything." Everything. There it was again. Not "you're going to hurt me." Not "you're wrong." "You're going to ruin everything." I spoke quietly, like a blade sliding out of its sheath. "Tell me what you did," I said. Lila laughed, but it sounded shaky. "You have no proof." I smiled even though she couldn't see it. "Maybe," I said. "But you just admitted there's something to prove." The line went dead. That night Denise called me. "We got security footage," she said. My heart jumped. "From the hospital?" "Yes," she said. "And it shows Lila going into Dr. Klein's office. Multiple nights. And leaving with envelopes." My throat tightened. "Is his face visible?" "Yes," Denise said. "Clear." I closed my eyes as grief and victory collided. This was it. This was the match. Now we needed the fire. Denise forwarded everything to the police, to the state medical board, to the insurance fraud unit. And she did one more thing. She contacted a local investigative reporter. Because sometimes justice needs a spotlight. Within days the story broke. Not with my name. Denise protected me. But the headline hit like thunder. "A physician under investigation for suspected fraud, misconduct, and possible manipulation of patient care." The hospital released statements. Dr. Klein's lawyer released denials. But the evidence kept piling. Then the insurance company launched their own investigation. And that's when Lila panicked. She showed up at my house unannounced, eyes wild. "You did this," she hissed. I stood in my doorway, calm, steady. I wasn't the woman in the hospital hallway anymore. I was sharper now. Lila stepped closer. "You think you're some hero. You think Ethan would want this." I stared at her. Ethan would want the truth. Her face twisted. "He was going to die anyway." The words hung in the air like poison. Then, as if she realized what she'd said, her eyes widened. I spoke softly. "Say that again." Lila's lips trembled. "I didn't. You just said he was going to die anyway," I repeated. Like that made it okay. Lila's breath came fast. "You don't understand. You needed money," I said. Her face crumpled into anger. "Yes, I needed money. I've been drowning my whole life while you got the perfect husband and the perfect house and..." I laughed once, bitter. "Perfect. You watched me hold his hand while he vomited into a trash can. You watched me beg doctors for answers. You watched me fall apart." Lila's eyes flashed. "And you still had him. You still had love. I had nothing." I stepped closer. "So you took him from me." Lila's voice dropped to a whisper. "He was scared. He wanted someone. He..." "Stop," I snapped. "Don't rewrite this. Don't pretend you were saving him." Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't sad tears. They were angry tears. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she whispered. That sentence was the final nail. Because it wasn't denial. It was confession. "I have it recorded," I said quietly. Her face went white. Behind me, Denise stepped into view, holding up her phone. Lila's knees buckled. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Denise spoke calmly. "Thank you, Lila. That was helpful." Lila turned and ran. But she didn't get far. A week later, she was arrested for forgery and attempted insurance fraud. Dr. Klein lost his license. Then he was charged too, after investigators found financial transfers and evidence of falsified records. The hospital faced lawsuits and reforms. Nurse Harris testified, trembling but brave. And me. I sat in my quiet house, surrounded by the ghost of a man I loved, and realized something hard. Revenge doesn't bring people back. It doesn't refill the empty chair at the kitchen table. Doesn't make your bed feel warm again. But justice makes sure the people who caused the pain don't get to walk away smiling. Months later, I went back to the hospital. Not to visit, to stand outside it and breathe. The building looked the same. Glass, steel, bright signs. But to me it was different. Because I had walked out of those doors once thinking my story was over. That grief would swallow me whole. But it didn't. I had heard the nurses talking. I had turned around. And I had fought. Not just for Ethan. For every family who didn't have the strength to question. For every patient who couldn't speak. For every quiet warning hidden under a dying man's breath. I learned something I will carry for the rest of my life. Karma isn't always lightning from the sky. Sometimes it's a woman who refuses to stay confused. Sometimes it's paperwork and proof. Sometimes it's patience. And sometimes, karma looks like the truth finally stepping into the light, even when it hurts. If you're listening right now and you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, remember this. People can lie to you. They can steal from you. They can even try to rewrite your story. But the truth has a way of surviving. And when you stop being afraid of it, that's when the real power comes back. So don't ignore the red flags. Don't let anyone make you feel crazy for asking questions. And don't ever believe that your pain has to stay quiet. If you believe in karma, if you believe the truth always comes out in the end, subscribe to this channel. Because around here we don't just tell stories. We remind the world that what you do in the dark always finds its way into the light.